All right. We're in a study this quarter of bad men, bad guys, but good lessons that we can get from those people. And as a rule, let me warn you that there are a whole lot of unusual people that the writer of this particular book that Doeg wants us to use chose to make the lessons from. And that's fine. It's good to learn about the less known individuals of the Bible. Today we're going to look at the character, the man named Doeg, D-O-E-G, Doeg. Now, the only way you probably know anything about Doeg is if you read through the Bible last year as you were supposed to. When you got to this point, you read the name Doeg, and you said, okay, good. Now, by this time, a year later, you don't even remember reading it. So, therefore, you don't remember what happened to the man. But we're going to talk about it today. Turn in your Bibles, your tablets, your phones, all those different devices. You'll turn to 1 Samuel. We're going to be in chapter 21, is where the story is that we're going to be looking at. But I'm going to back up a little bit. You turn to 21, and I'll catch up with you in just a minute. The reason we need a little background as to what's going on here, so that the Doeg story will make more sense. We're dealing in a time when David is being pronounced king of Israel, but has not yet taken the throne. He's still under Saul. Saul is still there. Saul is still the ruler, although God has already removed his spirit from Saul. And so David is constantly on the run. Well, in chapter 20, David and Jonathan get together. And David tells Jonathan that he's been invited to be with the family, be with the king at a particular meal. But he tells Jonathan, he says, I don't think I'm going to be there because it's not safe. Saul wants to kill me. And Jonathan, the son of Saul, says, I can't imagine that. Dad's not like that. He has his moments, but he wouldn't kill you. And so David says, well, I tell you what, you investigate this further. And tomorrow, or the next time we get together, you bring your bow with you. You bring arrows. And you signal to me whether it's safe to come in or not. You shoot the arrows, and I'll be where I can watch. And if you say to the young boy who you will have with you to go get those arrows, if you say to him, I think they're closer this way, come back this way to find them, then I'll know that it's safe to come to the dinner and be with your family. But on the other hand, if you find it's too dangerous, as I think it will be, you tell the boy to run further out to get the arrows. And I'll know at that point not to come in because it isn't safe. So Jonathan said, well, okay, we'll work with that idea. So Jonathan goes in at a later time and talks to his dad and mentions David's name. And Saul does not take too kindly to that idea. In fact, Saul says if it were up to me, he'd be dead. And at that point, Jonathan gets the real strong impression that maybe Dad would kill David if he had a chance. There's already been one attempt when Saul threw the spear at David while he was playing music for him. So the precedent has been set. So now David waits. David sees the signal. David knows not to go in, and David runs. That's chapter 20. The slide actually is verses 40 through 42, discusses David running for his life. Now, we get to chapter 21, and this is where our story, our part of the story for today takes place. Then David came to Nob, to Abimelech, the priest. And Abimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said to him, "Why are you alone, and no one with you?" David said to Abimelech, the priest, "The king has charged me with a matter, and said to me, let no one know anything of the matter about which I send you and with which I charge you. And I made an appointment with young men for such a place." All right. David goes to Nob, and that's where the tabernacle sat. That was its resting place for the moment. He goes there, he finds Abimelech the priest. Abimelech says, "Why are you by yourself and what's going on?" Now, I'm going to give you two thoughts. We're going to talk about Doeg in just a moment. But I want to bring up another, if you want to call it bad guy, not really a bad guy, but bad action. David tells a lie. Because he says, "The king told me to do this himself." The king didn't tell him to do anything. He's got to have a reason. He's got to have an excuse for being there. Because he's going to ask for something that he needs, and from Abimelech. But he outright tells a lie. And we're going to discuss that in a little bit later. All right. So Abimelech then offers him the leftover showbread. Now, David's men are hungry. They've been on the run. They can't eat. There's nowhere to eat. They don't trust anybody to feed them. So they're on the run. They need food. And they need supplies. And Abimelech says, "Well, all I've got for you is the showbread." Now, you must understand that showbread was made for the Sabbath. It was eaten on the Sabbath. But showbread that was left over after Sabbath was given to the priest for them to eat. And only for the priest to eat. This was sacred bread. It was not meant for consumption by individuals not in the priesthood after the Sabbath. So David, being hungry, says, "I need food." And Abimelech says, "Okay, well, I'll give you the showbread." Centuries later, Jesus will make reference to this event because the Pharisees are going to come and they're going to say, "Your disciples don't do things right. They don't wash their hands. They work on the side. They do these things that are ceremonially wrong. And how can you allow them to do it?" Jesus will say, "Well, if you'll remember, there was a time when your favorite king David, favorite individual David, went and got showbread from the priest to fill up his stomach and those of his army, those of his followers. That wasn't right. That was wrong. But because it was for salvation of a human being starving, needing food, the priest allowed it to happen, and God did not condemn it. There's no condemnation in Scripture for Abimelech's actions here, and yet what Abimelech did actually broke the law. Jesus will make the point that there are times that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. In other words, yes, Here are the rules. Yes, they must be followed. However, there can be exceptions made. And God accepts those exceptions because it is for the good of the human people that these exceptions be made. So when you're following the rules. It's good to follow rules. Please do not understand me to say that we have a choice in following rules. We do follow rules. But there are times when there are more sacred rules than the rules we're following. And we've got to always remember which rules are most important. I know I had a friend, still have a friend, I hope, but I had a friend whose daughter was a little girl at the time this happened. And they were on their way to Wednesday night services. You remember those. We used to do that a lot. And for those of you who need to be reminded that, yes, there can be a Wednesday night service. But anyway, they were on the way to Wednesday night service. And as they were going down the road, there was a person who was stranded with a car trouble or something or other. And the mother pulled over to help. Now, I don't know as in today's world this would all be that advisable, but this was many, many years ago. And pulled over, and the little girl just got terribly upset. Because she said, Mom, if we stop and help them, we're going to be late to church. Well, the idea being there may be a time when there's something more important than going to church or being on time. If you're helping someone who needs help, that's the thing to do. So Jesus is making the point not that we have the choices of which rules to follow. Now, I don't like this one, so I'm not going to follow it or whatever he's saying. There are times when there are rules, there are precedents that supersede others. And we're to be aware of the difference and obey God and do what needs to be done at the time. So, the bread's handed out, and David receives something that he normally wouldn't have wanted or needed, but is now allowed to have. Now, verse 7. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's herdsmen. Then David said to Abimelech, then have you not a spear or sword at hand? For I have brought nothing, I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. Now remember, he doesn't say he's running from the king. He says the king's business desires haste. And the priest said, the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you struck down in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take it, if you will take that, take it. And there is none but that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it to me. All right, so here we're introduced to Doeg. Now, Doeg is the chief of Saul's herdsmen. It's very interesting to me that if you know the history, Edom was never a friend of Israel. The country of Edom was never a friend of Israel. You would not likely, if you were a wise person, want an enemy in your camp, an enemy of your camp, maybe, to be a member of your military regime. Because there's always a chance of sabotage. There's always a chance of things not going the way they're supposed to go. And yet Saul according to this, has made Doeg not only part of his military service, but he's made him the head of his herdsmen. So he's given him a position of responsibility, and probably very unwise, as we're going to find out as the story continues. But you see here that Saul was not he was a military-minded individual, but he did not always consult and use the wisdom that God would have him use. All right. Saul seeks information about David. He wants to know more about David, and he asks his people, and they're very reluctant. They don't really get too enthusiastic about telling him anything about David. Why not? Well, many of them in Israel believed that David was the anointed king and that he should not be harassed. He shouldn't be chased. They're following the orders of the king, but now when he needs information, they're just not sure they can share a lot, even whether they know anything or not. They're saying things like they're not sure, they don't know. And so all of a sudden, Doeg, in verse 9, says, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Abimelech, the son of Atrib, and he inquired of the Lord for him and gave him provisions and gave him the sword of Goliath, the Philistine. Now, no one wants to talk about David, but the Edomite has no problem. The Edomite probably, possibly, saw this as an opportunity to ingratiate himself to King Saul. I've got the information. I saw what happened. I'll tell you. Now, you get the idea that this is not a trustworthy individual, but because he will sell out to whichever side wants his help at the moment and can reward him for it. He told Saul that David was with Abimelech. All right. Saul does not take too kindly with this idea. So he hears the report of Doeg. Now we're in chapter 22. He calls the priest of Abimelech to be questioned, and he accuses Abimelech of something. He says, did David come? And he says, did you inquired of the Lord for him, did you? Now, there is no record of Abimelech inquiring of God for David at this time. Yes, he gave him food. Yes, he gave him sword. Gave him weaponry, he gave him food. But he did not, according to Scripture, there's no reference to it. Now, why would Saul think that? Probably because Doeg put it in his mind. Because Doeg indicated that Abimelech not only gave him food and weaponry, but also consulted to God for him. Now, that is curious to me in some ways because it's apparently another lie being told. But also, why would David need to go through the priest? David talks to God. God's with David. God helps David. There really wouldn't be a reason to involve Abimelech in the conversation. But so I'm not at all certain Abimelech did that. Abimelech says, no, I didn't do that. I helped out. Yes, I gave him what he needed, but why are you upset with him? So, what's he done? What are you accusing him of? What crime has he committed? David has not committed any crime against the state or against Saul. The problem is Saul is jealous of David. You'll recall that as he's coming in from battle, the women of the city, this is earlier, of course, but the women of the city come out to meet him. And they're singing a song. And the song includes the words that Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. Well, the number of the enemy you killed is a mark of not only of your strength in battle and your ability to fight battles, but also that God is obviously on your side. So the implication of this little rhyme is that Saul is a warrior. David's a better warrior. Saul has God's favor, had God's favor, and now David has it because he's far more successful in battle than Saul. So Saul is not upset with David. He does not have any criminal charge to bring against him. He simply wants him dead because he's jealous. Now, is Saul affected by evil spirits? And the answer is yes. Did the evil spirits just take Saul over and give him no choice? And the answer is no. Evil spirits come when an individual, back in the Old Testament, when individuals refuse to listen to God, refuse to obey God, God would allow evil spirits to come into individuals and demons and demon possession and all that sort of thing. It's a situation that you see in the Old Testament. You see some of it in the New Testament. It carries over. But the issue that we need to be aware of, and I think needs to be stressed, is that evil spirits were never allowed to just enter a person without their permission unless there was someone around who would cast the demon out. In other words, God used Satan's power and Satan's willingness to enter into people, but he would only allow Satan to do it when there was someone there who could cast the demon out. And the casting of the demon out established the righteousness and the power of the individual casting the demon out. You may ask, well, why am I so concerned about this? I'm concerned about it for this reason. There are many people in the world today who believe that Satan attacks them, they're demon possessed, or they have a demon in them, and perhaps they really had no choice. It just happened. And so people are killed. You've had more than one of our serial killers of fame who claim that, basically, using an old Flip Wilson statement, the devil made me do it. Meaning they didn't have a choice. Now, was Satan behind it? Absolutely. Satan is behind all sin. But mankind has been given a choice. And if man chooses to let Satan pervade his life and rule his life, then you will have demonic happenings. But it's not because they had no choice. It's a matter of the choice they made. And it's very important because it serves as a very good excuse in our society today to say, well, I just couldn't help it. you know, that individual was just possessed. If the individual was possessed, I am not convinced that God allows that to happen anymore. And let me explain why I say that. If God allows Satan to possess people against their will, children, for example, you know, we have an example in the New Testament where a man brings his son to Jesus and says, a demon's entered in this boy, and he throws himself into the fire, and he gets hurt, all these kinds of things. And of course, the disciples at that time try to cast the demon out. They can't do it. And Jesus comes along and casts out the demon. Well, what was the point of that? Well, it served two purposes. One, it showed the power of God through Christ, and it showed the lack of power individuals may have from time to time if they're not permitted and God-driven to do that sort of thing. We have no record in Scripture of any way we can run an exorcist on anyone to cast a demon out. There are religious groups that claim to do that. And I say they claim to do it because they have not the power of God to do it. When you don't have the power of God to cast a demon out, it makes little sense for God to allow demons to possess people and give them no alternative but to be demon possessed and ultimately go to hell. So I said all that to give you the idea that it is a matter of choice as to whether an individual becomes so engrossed and so involved with Satan that Satan literally controls their lives. But at any point that Satan controls an individual's life, they have the power, they have the ability to repent and come back to God. But in this case, Saul has gotten past the point of even caring anymore. He accuses Abimelech of that, and in verse 13 he says, of 22, he says, you even helped him console God. No record of that. Did Doeg make that up? May have, but don't know that we have the entire conversation. But when after Abimelech assures Saul that David's actually loyal to the king. We know, by the way, that David was loyal to Saul because on more than one occasion, David had the ability and the situation developed where he could have killed Saul. And his men were telling him to do it because that takes care of your problem. That takes care of your enemy. Kill him. It's okay. And David says, no, I won't raise a hand against God's anointed. And on one occasion, he cuts the corner of Saul's robe off and later shows it to Saul at a great distance, but shows it to Saul to assure him of how close he was and what he could have done, but what he didn't do. Why didn't he do it? Because Saul was God's anointed. And I think there is a lesson in there for us to a degree, and that is that even though we don't agree with the way things are operating in certain situations, certain times, maybe political things didn't go the way we think they should have. The wrong person got elected, the right person didn't get elected, nobody should have been elected, whatever your view is. But we have a responsibility, as did David, to honor at least the position that that individual holds. I may not agree with the individual. I may not appreciate his moral or ethical conduct. I may not care for his political positions or the platform that he stands on. But as president, as senator, as congressman, I have an obligation by God to honor the leaders. I don't have to honor them as people, as the individual, but I have to honor the office. And so I treat them with respect and obedience unless they are in violation of what God has said. At that point, I'm to obey God rather than men. But we do have that obligation. So, Saul then irrationally, without any thought or rationality at all, commands his men to kill Abimelech. And because he assisted David, verse 16. Verse 17, the men won't do it. The men refuse to follow the order of Saul because they believe that David deserves the respect, that David hasn't done anything wrong, and that they'd be in violation of God's law if they did kill David. So what happens next? Well, Doeg, he's handy, and he's an Edomite. So he's ordered to kill all the priests in Nob, Abimelech and all the priests there. And in verse 18, he executed 85 individuals on that day. Doeg seems to show up at just the right time to do the wrong thing. He has there's very little material about this man in Scripture. But every instance that we see, he's doing something evil. Now, again, part of the problem is the fact that Saul has put him in a position of authority, which has made him handy to use. And maybe that's the reason Saul did it. He wanted someone outside of Israel that would do the dirty work, if you will. Do the assassinations if needed, or whatever. But in this particular case, Doeg does that. And then the next verse says that he went and killed everybody in the city or town of Nob. Men, women, children, animals, everything. Were executed. Now in verses 20 through 22, another one of the priests, Abihar, escapes. And he joins up with David. He finds David, joins up with him. And he's one of Abimelech's sons. And he tells David what's happened. That everyone's been killed. That everyone in the town has been killed as a result of David going through there. When David hears the story, when he hears what happened, he has great regret for the situation. And in verse 22, it says, Then David told Abihar, I saw Doeg the Edomite and Nob that day. I knew he would tell Saul, I am responsible for the death of your father's family. David wasn't directly responsible for what happened. David felt the need to express that he was, had it not been for David, it wouldn't have taken place. But there is one aspect of what David did that does result in what happened. And that is the lie that David told. And I said we would come back to that lie, or lying in general. Lying is a very, 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 very bad thing. And in our society today, lying is not treated as a bad thing. In our society, unfortunately, lying is treated as a normal thing. We literally have been taught now to expect people to lie. We don't really even expect people to tell the truth. Now, among our brethren, hopefully that's not true. But in our society, we're lied to every day, all day long, by various and sundry situations. If you watch politics, keep up with politics, people lie. And they're not criticized for doing it. It's called spinning. We've put an artful word to it. We actually, after a political speech, the reporters will go into the spin room. That's what it's called. And different backers of the person speaking or his detractors, either one, come along to the reporters and they give their side. Well, how did you think the speech went? Well, if I'm for him, I tell you all the good things he said. I even embellish the things that he said. If I'm on the other side, I'm tearing everything he said down and calling him basically a liar. And that's called a spin room, because I'm spinning the story to be advantageous to the side I'm for. We accept that. That's normal now. When you want the truth, what do? What is said to be done to get, you don't believe anything anybody says. You say, well, I won't believe it until we have him under oath, where he will be held guilty of perjury if he tells a lie. Our word is no longer, the word of our society is no longer its bond. We now have to have it written down, signed, and sworn to under oath to make sure we believe that it's the truth. And even then we're still questioning it, but okay, at least we're close. That's where our society has gotten to. Now, where does lying come from? Well, Jesus said that you're of your father, the father of lies, Satan. Satan is the father of lies. He's the first liar in history. He's the most proficient liar. And he teaches people how to lie very well. If you'll recall, in the Garden of Eden, God had said, if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will die. And when Satan talks to Eve, he says to Eve, is there not any tree in the garden that you can't eat of? And she said, we eat of every tree in the garden except the one in the middle of the garden. Because God said on the day that we eat of that tree, we will die. To which Satan responds point blank, you will not surely die. She eats of the fruit, gives it to Adam, and what happens to Adam and Eve? They both die. Why? Because she believed a lie. So lying has gone back to the beginning almost of creation. First real sin involved was the lie that Satan told Eve. And then Eve, of course, makes excuses later and all that. But lying is so very, very, very damaging. A lie not only distorts the truth, but has lasting effects past the event being lied about. The lasting effect is this. When someone lies to you, and you discover later that you believe the lie, and it didn't happen the way they said that it did, or things didn't work out the way they said they were going to, what does that make you do with that person? It makes you distrustful. You no longer have trust in the person. We're now to a point in our society where we're not even able to trust what our textbooks say, because now they're being rewritten to fit an agenda. And so what is history? Is history fact or is it a lie? How do we know? You know, when I grew up, when you grew up, you were in school, you went through history, you went through science, and you were told it was scientifically true because it was proven. It was a proven fact. It had to be proven to be a scientific fact. And then evolution came along. The theory of evolution is a theory, not a fact. We know that the fact is God created the heavens and the earth. But we're being told that that's no longer right. We're being lied to. We're being lied to about history. I don't know. I didn't live back then. So if Christopher Columbus discovered the West America in 1492, I take their word for it. Never questioned it. It was history. It was a fact. Now we're being told, no, that's not true. It didn't happen that way. This changed, that changed. But the problem is that the people telling us it's changing, or that it didn't happen that way, are doing so to promote an agenda. And that agenda is not a godly agenda. Now, what do we do about all this? Well, we can't stop the lies. Only God can stop it, and God will stop it when Christ comes again. Up until that point, lies will continue. But what we've got to do is we've got to be aware. And I'm concerned about history, and I'm concerned about science, I'm concerned about all those things. But that pales in comparison to what I'm very concerned about. And that is when we're being told, and Satan has been doing it for many years, changing what the Bible says. Where the Bible, of course, still says what it says. There's no denying that. But what we're being told is that certain things don't matter anymore. We can't, it's past fixing it. You might as well join in with the group because this is the way it's going to be. And I would suggest to you that that's not true. That we need to stand up for the truth of the Bible. But in order to stand up for the truth of the Bible, we've got to know what the Bible says. And I want people, my brethren, both in this building and in other places, I want you to study. I want you to read. I want you to know what the book says. Do not take my word for it. Do not take Dewey Howard's word for it. Don't take Dale's word for it. They're not intentionally going to tell you something wrong. I'm not implying that at all, nor am I. But we need to be people who search the scriptures daily to determine what the truth is. And never stop searching scripture and learning, because you may have been misinformed on something, unintentionally or intentionally, and you need to know what the truth is. How do we know what truth is? We read, we study. We gain greater understanding. We ask God for help. All those things. But the bottom line is, we need to know the truth. And truth has become, in many parts of our world, a very evasive thing. And it's hard to trust people. It's hard to put your trust in anything. One of the red flags of a lie is the phrase "as seen on TV." In other words, there are products out there as seen on TV that are going to do all these marvelous things. And occasionally, you may have seen that and went, I'll give that a shot. That really does look like it might work. There are a few that do. But the vast majority of as seen on TV will never work the way it looked on TV. It always looks so much better. The food cooks up. I don't know, how many of you bought 14 skillets? How many other more skillets on TV right now that do everything under the sun? Copper, lead, aluminum, I mean, every kind of, and they're all the best. And those eggs will slide on in there. I know, I've seen it. I mean, that can't be wrong. That's got to be right, because I've seen it happen. But we're being conned. But the beauty of Christianity is we have a God who's not conned. If God says it, it's true. We count on it. There's no other entity that we can put our faith in to the extent that we put our faith in God. When we put our faith in God and believe that what the book says is true, we eliminate a lot of issues, a lot of problems. It doesn't take care of everything, but it certainly takes care of the majority. And if we know what the book says and we practice what the book says, God says, I'll have a place for you in heaven. I'm building that room or that mansion, whatever it is, it's being built for you in heaven right now. And all you got to do is stay faithful, trust me, be obedient, and one day it will be yours.